Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Bridge course in English Literature that is offered by the Department of English of Yashwant Mahavidyalaya Nanded. Video, we are going to talk about what literature is. Before going to talk what literature is, let us understand what art is. It is the expression of human creative skills and imagination. Art can make us feel the emotions, it can stir emotions within us. In fact, art is a subjectively expressed and your personal experience along with very beautiful meaning derived from the expression. In fact, art is an expression of culture itself. It is highly engaging and helps us to understand what actually things are, both outside and inside us. Art is anything that moves us into attentiveness and observation. So, it is important in human consciousness. Thus, it is a mechanism for the species to survive on this planet. Goethe's question on art are as following. Johann Wolfgang van Goethe, who belonged to the 18th century, asked three important questions to use while examining any piece of art. The very first question is, what was the goal of art? If the answer that is provided by Gang is to represent the world and experiences without the use of physical forms. The second question that is asked by Goethe is, did the poets achieve it? The answer is yes, in their own respective ways, maybe by following the classical rules, some following the romantic notions, some following their own individualistic ways of expression. Yes, all the poets achieved their respective goals. The third question is, was it worth doing the art? And the answer given by Goethe is yes, because it gives you to feel, to think, and to imagine the work of art. Rabindranath Tagore, the famous Nobel laureate from India, also answered this question, what is art? In his own very famous essay that he has written. He says art is the expression of one's freedom to unite with the bigger picture of life. Within art, the artist's task is, according to Tagore, to translate his joys into freedom, his joys into forms, his joys into the expressions, and also to find finite expressions of the infinite forms the artist is experiencing. This is a beautiful expression of what art is by Rabindranath Tagore. Yes, it is the finite expressions using language, if it is literature, colors, if it is painting, musical notes, if it is music, and dance gestures, if it is dance. Using these finite expressions, the artists express the infinite experience that they experience within themselves. Art is more transcendental and spiritual for Rabindranath Tagore because in the center of it stands the human being and his or her potential, which can be achieved through a unity of the individual with the larger community, with nature, with community, with the world, with the entire cosmos, or in fact, God Himself. This is what exactly is the Advaita philosophy of the East, propagated by Rabindranath Tagore in his answer to what is art. Art is a way of uniting with the entire cosmos and the cosmic energy through various experiences and their expressions. What a beautiful way of defining art is by this Nobel laureate from India. There could be different types of arts. One could be the mechanical art or the applied art. The mechanical art minister to the material and the physical needs of man, and they are more decorative in the approach. Say, for example, a potter does the pottery, cobbler, goldsmith, carpentry in every form that we are discussing here Either a pottery, cobblery, goldsmith, or carpentry has got beauty in it, has got imagination in it, and is more decorative and a wonderful expression coming out from the respective person. But all these are mechanical because they use the material and are helpful for fulfilling the physical requirements or the needs of man. They are more artistic and decorative. The second type of art is called as the fine art. The fine arts will not have any impurities like money matters involved in it and has finer expressions of skill, beauty, and emotion. Say, for example, architecture. Architecture is the world of the art and science of designing the buildings, which is not involved in money unless and otherwise you are making up to construct a building. But architecture as such is a beautiful art and science of imagination to design wonderful buildings and constructions. Similarly, is the fine art sculpture. Sculpture is the art of making two or three dimensional representative or abstract forms, especially by carving stone or wood or by casting metal or plaster. Then the third is music. It's a beautiful fine art which involves in culture and the expression using sounds and musical notes. Dance is the next fine art that we have in society. Dance is a performing art consisting of purposefully selected sequences of human movement in a very rhythmic way. The non-verbal communication skills of expression on the face, movement of the eyes, the beautiful gestures with hands and leg movement constitute the dance to express various artistic talents. Painting is the next fine art, which is the beautiful world of colors. And literature, into which we are, is a fine art which does everything using words and words and words. If we go into the characteristics of literature, it is the artistic expression of thoughts, feelings with beauty and imagination using language and words. There are different genres of literature like poetry, prose, drama, and fiction. Essentially, literature is artistic. That is the first point. It is beautiful. Maybe the beauty is involved through the expression of rhyme, rhythm, using figures of speech, wonderful symbols and symbolism that is used, using a pictorial imagery with the help of words. So essentially, literature is beautiful, using rhyme, rhythm, figures of speech, symbolism, and imagery. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have any element of truth. Of course, literature gives us the truths of life. It has imagination with it, it has the artistic beauty in it, but expressing the perfect truths of life. And hence, in the Indian context, because it has got beauty and truth, it is also the expression of divinity, Satyam, Shivam, and Sundaram. It is a perfect combination of beauty, truth, and divinity in itself. Another very interesting feature of literature is that it is highly suggestive. It will not give the truths of life or the beauty of life or talks about the divinity in a straightforward way. It is highly suggestive. And the suggestiveness is because of the use of imagination of the poet involving in the sthayi bhavas or the basic innate feelings and emotions of the individuals. A beautiful combination of innate feelings and imagination extends a high note of suggestivity to the expression of literature. So, literature is artistic and also suggestive. Moreover, the artistic and suggestive characters of literature also gives a permanence to it. It has the innate feelings that are involved within its expression. Because of the use of innate feelings or sthayi bhavas, which are common to all castes, classes, genders, creeds, nationalities, and of all ages. It has a permanent effect in us. What is the emotion that is expressed of the character in a piece of literature also is true with all of us. We can also experience these emotions that the imaginary characters express in literature. And that is the reason why we can connect with literature and its characters beautifully, thereby having a permanent effect on man. So, the feature of To Be or Not to Be of Hamlet, to be highly ambitious of Macbeth, to be jealous and suspicious of Othello, are not exactly the features that belong to those characters in the imaginary texts of Hamlet, Macbeth, and Othello written by Shakespeare way back in the 16th century. Every bit of Hamlet is alive within us. Even we experience this problem of to be and not to be till today, and maybe later, as long as human beings exist. The feeling of jealousy and suspicion of Othello is alive in all of us today. The element of becoming highly ambitious in our respective careers and lives is, is alive even today within all of us. The King Lear is alive within all of us even today. So these are not just imaginary characters, though it has an element of imagination mixed with emotion. It has a permanent effect in all of us because all these characters are alive in all of us till date and as long as the human beings exist. It is for this nature that permanence and having a permanent effect is a very important characteristic feature of literature. So, literature essentially is artistic with beauty, truth, and divinity, highly suggestive with imagination and emotion within it, and has a permanent effect in all of us by touching our innate feelings within us. Thus, literature and all fine arts have a permanent feature among all of us. If you want to have a test of your literature, the most important test of literature is universality. As we just discussed, it has a permanent effect in all of us, irrespective of caste, class, religion, creed, nationality, and gender, including age. So it has a universal effect in all of us. All of us, irrespective of our genders and ages across the globe, feel that whatever the expression of the characters in literature are, is exactly the expression of all of us. The love of Romeo and Juliet is not exactly belonging to them, but belonging to all of us. The fear of Julius Caesar doesn't only belong to Julius Caesar, but all of us. It is this universal element which is the first important test of literature. Each piece of literature, if you look at the test, the second test is has a permanent style and a personal element of expression within it. Along with having permanence and universality, every bit of literature, every piece of literature has got a personal style of the writer himself. The Miltonic classical style is different from the Wordsworthian romantic style. The Shelleyan romantic style is different from a highly classical T.S. Eliottian style. Every writer has its own style of expression, nevertheless, expressing and aiming at touching every individual through his universal influence with a permanent effect on all of us. So, these two become the important tests of literature. The next question comes as to why should we read literature at all? Is it important for us to read literature? In fact, it is only literature that preserves the ideals to civilization. It helps us through various expressions and people, characters, to know men in the society. It also helps us to know the truths of life. In fact, the truths of life are given to us by history, science, philosophy, religion, and literature. The historical truths are dead truths of the past with no life in it. The scientific truths are with high objective element without any emotion involved into it. The philosophical truths are highly obscure and difficult to understand. The religious truths require a religious bent of mind to accept them. In fact, it is the literary truths that tell us the truths of life, truths of history, truths of science, truths of philosophy, and even religion in a more beautiful, simplistic way with an element of imagination and emotion involved into it. And so the literary truths are easier for us to understand. In fact, we enjoy these literary truths to try to understand the equally difficult scientific truths, philosophical truths, and religious truths. So maybe literature helps us to know men and to know the truths of life with a greater effect and an easier way than any other branch of human knowledge. And that's why the importance of literature is to preserve the ideals to civilization through the stories, know the men through the characters, and know the truths of life through the imagination and emotion, having an everlasting effect on us. We have a number of texts, literary as well as non literary. Every piece of writing will not become literature in spite of the fact that literary as well as non literary texts use language to the expression. If you look at the types, there could be a number of points of similarities and differences. The main idea, the overall idea or theme, or what information the text is trying to convey. If you look at literary texts, the types can be poetry, non-fiction, drama, and fiction. The types in non literary texts could be advertisements, brochures, newspaper articles, magazine articles, and editorials. The main idea in literary texts will be scattered across the text and is expressed through the dialogues of the characters in literature. Whereas in non literary texts, the main idea is highly short and is usually stated early in the form of title, subheading, or paragraphs, not through characters. The purpose of writing the literary text is the expression of the poet, and dialogues of the characters express the purpose of writing it. Whereas in non literary texts, the author's wordings and the information they choose to include will give us the clues as to why the text is written. Not in the form of characters, but in a very objective and matter of fact way. In the non literary texts, the expression of the purpose is. When we look at an intended audience, literature aims at all individuals, irrespective, as we have been saying, caste, class, religion, nationality, age, and gender. Whereas non literary texts have the interested people only, those who are interested in the topic will go to the non literary text and read only those particular articles. So, literary text has an effect to all the human beings, whereas non literary texts touch the audience, only those audience who are interested in that particular topic. When we look at the facts and figures of literary texts, the facts and figures are for aesthetic pleasure. You get a divine pleasure by reading a piece of poem, literature, drama, short story, or fiction. Whereas in non literary texts, the facts and figures give the maximum importance with no change at all because it doesn't have the element of emotion or imagination in it. It is just an objective representation of facts and figures. Whereas literary texts also give us the facts and figures, but by giving us pleasure because of imagination and emotion that is involved into it. In fact, if we look at the points of differences with respect to literature and non-literary texts, it has literary texts will have imagination, the scenes that are depicted, the characters that we have, the interactions that are shown there, the dialogues that are between the characters, and the action that goes on within drama, novel, short story, or even a piece of poem is highly touching and imaginative. There is no element of imagination in non literary texts like newspaper articles. They just state the matter of facts and realities as they are. Literary texts also incorporate the expression of emotion. In fact, the emotional outburst of the basic innate feelings are perfectly blended with highly imaginative vitality among the characters in literature. But in non literary texts, the emotions expressed are true to the reality and observation. They are expressed in a highly objective way, where there is no element of imagination, drama, situation, and characters. In literary texts, the maintenance of rhyme, rhythm of the language, which adds to the beauty of the text. Whereas in non literary text, the the part is expressed in simple, prosaic way with very less element of beauty into it. It is highly objective and matter of fact way in non literary text, whereas rhyme and rhythm and figures of speech add to the beauty of the literary text. The language that is used in literature is highly figurative. By figurative, we mean the poet uses figures of speech, and appropriate expression of feelings and emotions are observed by using appropriate similes, metaphors, personification, hyperboles, oxymoron, and so on. Whereas in non literary texts, the style that is maintained is highly prosaic and matter of fact way. Hardly a poet or hardly a writer in non literary texts use figures of speech or figurative language to express. Literary truths are factual truths with emotional truths combined, whereas non literary truths are only factual and objective. So, these will be the points of similarities and differences between literary expressions and non literary expressions. We could take a number of examples. Unicorn in a Garden by James Thurber is a beautiful example that expresses the modern couple and the realities of life. A Cup of Tea by Catherine Mansfield expresses the emotional attachment that is involved between two ladies. Catherine Mansfield is an Australian writer, and I would want all of you to read this Cup of Tea. Unicorn in a Garden or A Cup of Tea are very small short stories that enable you to understand one aspect of your own life or emotion. Necklace by Guy de Maupassant, this French short story is a wonderful story which expresses the highly objective and subjective emotions as well as interactions between characters. Another beautiful story that I want all of you to read is The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry, presenting the modern life and the relationships between wife and husband. Kabuliwala by Rabindranath Tagore is a beautiful short story from the Indian soil which expresses the emotion of a small child called Minnie. Swami and his friends are beautiful small short stories that are written by R.K. Narayan, which also had come out in the form of television series titled as Malgudi Days. I would want my students to read a few stories of Swami and his friends. Apart from this, we shall be acquainted with Othello, Hamlet, Macbeth, and King Lear by Shakespeare, which are the iconic tragedies penned by Shakespeare. These are some of the examples that we need to look into to understand the difference between literature and non literary texts. I hope all of you will go through these texts, at least a few of these short stories, and try to find out how literary texts are different from non literary texts. Definitely, these literary texts are full of, or rather packed by, characters, emotion, plot, dialogues, imagination, beauty, and the universal truths of life, for which they are remembered throughout. Thank you very much for watching this video. Hope you had enjoyed the session. Let's meet in the next video. Bye for now.